The European Union warns of a robust and united response and claims sabotage after 2 Russian pipelines to Europe reported leaks. The Kremlin says European nations blaming Russia is absurd. Ukraine calls on the EU and NATO to hit Russia with more sanctions and send more weapons after Kremlin proxies held what Kiev calls sham annexation votes in 4 occupied Ukrainian regions. US Vice President Kamala Harris condemns actions by China in the Pacific while pledging to deepen unofficial ties with Taiwan. Three Palestinians are killed in clashes with Israeli forces in Jenin, a town that's been a focus of a half-year-long campaign of raids in the West Bank. And we will start here in the UK, where the Bank of England has made an emergency intervention which it says is needed to maintain financial stability. The central bank says its actions are designed to restore orderly market conditions. The bank will buy government bonds, according to a statement, on whatever scale is necessary. The effective cost of UK government borrowing had been spiking after a so-called mini-budget last week. It also follows a rare step from the International Monetary Fund, which had urged the UK government to re-evaluate unfunded tax cuts. The IMF says the plan is likely to increase inequality and worsen inflation. Earlier this week, the pound hit a record low against the US dollar. Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng has been meeting with Conservative MPs and bank bosses to try and reassure them about what he says is a plan for growth. But markets reacted negatively to the decision to slash taxes that he announced last week, paid for in the short term by borrowing at a time of already high inflation. The plan included cancelling a planned increase in corporation tax and the scrapping entirely of the 45% top income tax bracket. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by WION's business editor, Sumit Chaturvedi, who's with me live. Sumit, just give us some context. This is a pretty extraordinary intervention from the Bank of England.
Ollie, it's kind of, we can say that one of the biggest crises UK is facing post-Brexit. So it definitely needs extraordinary interventions from the Central Bank, Bank of England. So it has now gone for bond purchase program. Clearly the intention is to put more money into the economy without disturbing fiscal balance much. So bond purchase will happen from now to October 14, and it's a safe way to put more money into the market. Well, yes, it's been timed in a way that it looks quite urgent, but situation is quite dire as we understand. Pound has crashed to the lowest against dollar on Monday, and the economic situation of UK is clearly not in a very good shape. So keeping that in mind, it's also going to postpone the gilt sale also for the next few weeks. It's not going to go for that. So BOE is taking some steps so that there's a balance which can be achieved in such dire situation. Remember, IMF has already given a stark warning to Bank of England that it's not going to clearly be good for economy. The tax cuts that came for Europe, for UK in fact, also Moody's said that they risk going downwards as far as ratings are concerned. So keeping all that in mind, they have to take urgent steps. So this particular step is one of those urgent steps. Remember, the Ukraine-Russia war is going nowhere. There is no clarity what's going to happen there. There's no clarity on UK gas supplies to UK as well. Winter is fast approaching and imports are getting costlier for United Kingdom. Keeping that in mind, this step was clearly long overdue and the bank has taken it now.
And Sumit, just briefly on the bank taking a step like this, because clearly it's designed to shore up confidence in financial markets when it comes to the UK economy, when it comes to UK borrowing, when it comes to the UK currency. But how does the bank ensure that it doesn't just seem like panic and make things worse?
Well, it's clearly the last step which was taken, that was the step that created panic in the markets. FIs, they are still going out to US for getting good interest rates with security. Apart from that, the tax cuts were clearly not favored by the markets. There were losses worth billions of dollars. This particular step is, in a way, the bank is showing it's clearly backing the economy. Needed whenever there's a need, it will take further steps, and this step has been taken urgently so that the economy can be supported, the markets can be supported.
Sumit, thank you. Well, it came after the UK's Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, said that his party is ready to lead the UK out of the economic crisis.
Fail to prepare, and you prepare to fail. Conference, that's how the Tories have governed our country for 12 long years. That's why our economy has been more brittle than others in the face of crisis. They used to lecture us about fixing the roof when the sun was shining. But take a look around Britain. They haven't just failed to fix the roof. They've ripped out the foundations, smashed through the windows, and now they've blown the doors off for good measure.
Keir Starmer announced to the Labour Party conference that a Labour government would create a publicly owned company to drive a revolution in renewable power.
Green and growth don't just go together. They're inseparable. The future wealth of this country is in our air, in our seas, in our skies. Britain should harness that wealth and share it with all. British power to the British people. That's why I've always said we will fight the Tories on economic growth. Their record is appalling.
Well, given that latest intervention in the economy from the Bank of England, the Labour Party is also calling now for an urgent statement from the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. The latest polling, meanwhile, shows Labour with a record lead over the governing Conservatives.
45%. It is currently higher than the headline top rate.
Next to Ukraine, and after 5 days of voting in what the West says are sham referendums, Russia has released results that, as predicted, claim that 4 Ukrainian regions voted in favour of joining Russia. Moscow says up to 4 million people voted in the Russia-orchestrated referendums. The regions make up around 15% of Ukraine's territory. According to the claimed results in the votes, Ukraine, the US and a series of allies say were illegal. 93.1% of voters in Zaporizhia came back supporting Russia, according to the numbers from Russian-backed officials. Almost 87% of people in Kherson in favour, according to that data. In Lugansk, the number at nearly 98.5% and 99.23% in Donetsk.
В 2014 году мы об этом мечтали. А дальше мы творили историю. Именно так. Сегодня исторические дни. Мы воссоединяемся с нашей большой родиной, с великой Россией.
Kiev has repeatedly dismissed the votes as a sham. President Zelensky says his forces will continue their goal of recapturing territory taken by Russia.
Я підкреслив на засіданні Радбезу, реалізація Росії так званого кримського сценарію і чергова спроба анексії української території означатиме, що з цим президентом Росії немає про що говорити.
The vote took place in the absence of international recognition. There have been many reported cases of fake votes and of residents being coerced into voting in favour of joining Russia.
Как только все эти процессы сейчас пройдут юридического утверждения результатов референдума, после этого мы приступим к организации органов власти.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to announce the annexation of the regions on Friday during an expected address to the Russian parliament. That's the same way he announced the annexation of Crimea days after holding a referendum there, in a vote also denounced by much of the international community. The UK has imposed new sanctions targeting dozens of top Russian officials and companies over links to the so-called referendums. The US says it will never recognise Russia's annexations. The unexplained leak in the Nord Stream pipelines carrying gas from Russia to European countries are now being described by European Union officials as sabotage.
This boiling water churning above Russian gas pipelines is the result of what Germany, Denmark and Sweden are now calling attacks, which have caused major leaks into the Baltic Sea. The two Nord Stream pipelines are at the center of an energy standoff between Russia and Europe. Denmark and Sweden released striking images a day after the leaks were reported, saying the largest gas leak had caused surface disturbance of around 0.6 miles in diameter. But it remains unclear what or who could have been behind the Nord Stream pipeline leaks. Europe on Tuesday said it was investigating claims of intentional attack leveled by several countries. Poland's foreign minister Zbigniew Rau pointed fingers at Russia, though without evidence.
We are not in a position to reject the notion that this could be an element of Russian hybrid war against NATO. The explosions took place very close to the Danish territorial waters, but not within the Danish territorial waters. Because if this were the case, this would be an intrusion into the NATO territory.
Sweden's Prime Minister Magdalena Andersson also expressed concern.
We have
Swedish intelligence, but we've also received information from our contacts in Denmark, and based on this, concluded that this is probably a deliberate act. It's probably a matter of sabotage.
Christopher Botzau is head of Denmark's energy agency.
It is very rare that damages of this type occur, and now 3 damages have happened within 24 hours, which is why we are very worried about what the reason for this could be.
Botzau says it could take a week for gas to stop draining out of Nord Stream 2, that ships could lose buoyancy if they enter the area, and has warned that because the sea surface is full of methane, there is an increased risk of explosions. Western countries imposed sanctions on Russia after they launched what they called a special military operation in Ukraine earlier this year. Moscow slashed its gas deliveries to Europe in retaliation, blaming Western sanctions for causing technical difficulties. But on Tuesday, Moscow also agreed that sabotage was a possibility. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warned that sabotage was a lose-lose situation.
The leaks are under investigation. There are initial reports indicating that this may be the result of an attack or some kind of sabotage, but these are initial reports and we haven't confirmed that yet. But if it is confirmed, that's clearly in no one's interest.
The escalating energy war between European capitals and Moscow has damaged major Western economies, sent gas prices soaring, and has sparked a hunt for alternative supplies. While neither of the 2 pipelines currently leaking were in use on Monday, the incidents will sink any remaining expectations that Europe could receive fuel via Nord Stream 1 before winter.
Well, my colleague Rosie Burchard joins us live now from Brussels for more on this. And Rosie, is it fair to say that the language on this issue has stiffened rather overnight from the European Commission? And what might that robust response look like, do we think?
Absolutely. Well, the EU started by treading a pretty cautious path here, Ollie. First of all, the word from officials was that it was too soon to say what these leaks were caused by. But overnight, in the past 12 hours or so, we've seen EU officials being quite much more definitive in what they're saying. We've heard from the example from the EU's foreign policy chief Josep Borrell saying that that all information currently available points to the fact that this looks like a deliberate act or the result of a deliberate act. And European Commission President von der Leyen has used that word, which is very much on everyone's lips around Brussels, the word sabotage. Now, EU leaders have stopped short of laying the blame at anyone's feet. They have not officially blamed Russia, for example, but they have threatened a robust and united response. So they've threatened retaliation. Now, what could that look like? Well, the tool the EU has really at its disposal in its toolbox is sanctions. Sanctions against perpetrators of this potential attack. Now, the EU, of course, already has a swathe of sanctions imposed against Russia over its war in Ukraine and even for other issues. So there are some analysts here in Brussels saying, well, the EU is looking a little bit impotent at this time. They perhaps can look into further sanctions. But at this stage, we should say that investigators are still looking into the causes of these leaks, even if that word sabotage is very much having a consensus built around it now, with eyebrows being raised across this European Union. But what is certainly the case is that this is a dramatic escalation in this ongoing energy crisis, which is being experienced across this European Union, both as households and businesses struggle to pay soaring energy bills and as European Union governments scramble to replace gas supplies which were once imported from Russia.
Thank you, Rosie. That's Rosie Burchard reporting live from Brussels. The rise of the far right in Italy has brought fear to many in the LGBTQ+ community. In the past, some members of the incoming ruling party have been accused of being openly discriminatory.
Italy's LGBT community has very real fears after a conservative bloc dominated by the far right won the country's general election. That's according to leading gay rights campaigner and political candidate for the Gay Party, Fabrizio Marazzo. He's worried about a possible erosion of civil rights under the new administration.
We have big concerns for new generations, because they are creating an ideological battle, due also to the deep economic crisis, because of energy and other reasons. So hate was used as a tool against a given community in many other instances in the past, which we hope won't happen again.
The Nationalist Brothers of Italy group, led by Giorgia Meloni, emerged as the largest party in the September 25th ballot. She will lead the most right-wing government in Rome since World War II. As part of a conservative coalition, Meloni is allied with the League, another far-right force led by Matteo Salvini, as well as the mainstream conservative Forza Italia of former Premier Silvio Berlusconi. Marazzo fears that the bloc's conservative views may lead to discrimination for the LGBT community.
If there's no action in conjunction with schools, social services, help centers risk failing to create synergy. Because you can offer support to young people, but if in the school or the place of work where the act of discrimination happens, there's no law to intervene. We can only give moral or psychological support to the people affected.
Non ci sono leggi e tutele per intervenire, possiamo soltanto dare un supporto morale, psicologico alle persone.
Therefore, there can't be a social change. This means not only to go backwards, but also that the situation would get worse, and we are very scared about that.
Abbiamo molta paura di questo.
There is already some evidence behind Marazzo's concerns. Conservative Catholic lobby Pro Vita e Familia has called on the new government to pick an education minister opposed to any gender and LGBT ideological colonisation in schools. 45-year-old Meloni herself presents as a defender of Christian values and an enemy of what she calls gender ideology and the LGBT lobby. Explaining her position to gay parenting rights, she said that unlucky children who are up for adoption deserve the best, meaning a father and a mother. She has, however, denied suggestions that her outlook would stretch to abolishing existing legislation on abortion rights or same-sex partnerships. Maloney is not expected to take office before late October, so it's too early to say what her premiership will look like. But her party's culture spokesman remarked just last week that gay couples are not legal, later claiming he was referring only to gay couples who adopt. In terms of public opinion, an Ipsos poll in June showed that 63% of Italians backed marriage rights for gay people and 59% were in favour of gay adoptions, numbers that have increased in recent years.
It's World Rabies Day today. India bears the highest burden of human rabies deaths. One group in the Indian state of Himachal Pradesh is trying to make a change.
Once I came to the mountains, I didn't want to leave, right? It's a little bit of an addiction, I think. The first time I came was only like a 2-week visit, was a month, anyway. And then I made a promise to the dogs that I would come back and do something for them.
When we first started Manali Space in 2019, we didn't have this place. So we did a lot of stuff on bikes and buses, Kamesh and I would travel around, go treating dogs just whenever we saw them. Eventually people started to sort of get to know a bit about us and call us about dogs. And so then eventually people helped us to find this place.
इससे पहले मैं दिल्ली में लेबोरेटरी में था, अभी यहाँ पे करेंटली दिल्ली के 5 से 6 ऑपरेशन होते हैं और यहाँ पे अच्छा सीखने को मिल रहा है और जानवरों की सेवा कर रहा हूँ।
We have 2 cows at the moment, although so far this year we've rescued 10, so luckily they've got better and we've released them. This is Sonia. Sonia was hit by a car, but her leg was so badly broken and all the tissue had died, so we had to actually amputate her leg, which you think would be really bad for a cow, but she manages, she walks around, so she's okay.
ये हमारा डॉग किचन है जहाँ पर हम इनका खाना कुक करते हैं सुबह और शाम। यहीं से हम खाना प्रेप करके इनको सबको डालते हैं। दाल मिक्स है राइस के साथ और न्यूट्री और चिकन मिक्स है। हम जो भी डोनेशन हम आते हैं वही हम लोग यहाँ पर यूज करते हैं। इनका सामान, खाने का सामान से लेके दवाई लेने से लेके सैलरीज, रेंट, सब कुछ बहुत मुश्किल होता है क्योंकि हमारी छोटी सी जगह है, ज़्यादा बड़ा एरिया नहीं है, तो प्रॉब्लम्स तो बहुत आती है, लेकिन चलो लगे हुए हैं। यहाँ पर था नहीं कुछ भी ऐसा हमसे पहले, तो हमने स्टार्ट किया है और हम काफ़ी एनिमल्स की हेल्प भी कर चुके हैं, तो काफ़ी अच्छे लोग जुड़ भी रहे हैं। मनाली स्टेज के अंदर जो भी डॉग आता है उसका नाम उसी दिन हम डाल देते हैं, तो डॉग के लिए भी एक पर्सनैलिटी जैसे बिंदिया ना, लगता है कि जैसे बिंदिया ही थी।
मनाली स्टेज में सबसे अच्छा मेरे को ये चीज़ लगती है कि एनिमल से प्यार करते हैं, एनिमल के साथ कैसे रहना है, किस तरह उन्हें ट्रीट करना है, ये सब सीखने को मिलता है यहाँ पे। मैंने कई जगहों पे वॉलंटियरिंग किया है ना, इंडिया में महाराष्ट्र, गुजरात, हर जगह ऐसा होता है, एवरी डॉग गेट्स अ नंबर, देयर इज नो प्राइवेट अटेंशन, जो फ्रेंडलीनेस खुद में आनी चाहिए ना, आफ्टर गेटिंग ट्रीटमेंट एंड फूड इतने दिन रहने के बावजूद। बट यहाँ पे ऐसा है कि हर एक कुत्ते को अपना नाम मिलता है, ठीक है, उसको ट्रीट किया जाता है इस तरीके से कि उसको कम से कम स्ट्रेस में उसको हील हो जाए, वो फ्रेंडली हो जाए। यही चीज़ है जो मतलब विच डिफरेंशिएट्स दिस NGO फ्रॉम एनी NGO इन द वर्ल्ड दैट यू नो दैट एग्जिस्ट्स।
Finally, in Colombia, a lawmaker has taken his horse to Congress to show support for farmers of the country. I'll leave you with that story. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.
Porque se resbala, ¿no? Sí. There are many other